What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I am your host, as always, Manugas Creamy, alongside my co-host Cameron Parker Poo and Gage Madrid NFL. Obviously, we are still missing someone. We're missing Glenn. He is having to deal with a sporadic case of hemorrhoids, so he is not able to be on the show tonight. He's having trouble sitting down.
But due to the fact that we are such a great family, we decided to give him a preparation H, a nice little box of preparation H to work with. So,
yes, and it has its own self-applicator with a little brush on it, so you just brush it on.
Yep,
it's like the size of a paintbrush. Just lean over and paint it on there.
Yep,
it'll be wonderful.
So we started off with Bill and glory holes in the behind the scenes, and
that was you, sir.
And now we're fucking going Glenn in preparation H. Oh man, not even 30 seconds and we're gone. We're off the rails, man.
You're welcome. So, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing well.
Right there. Just completely throw Glenn under the bus.
That's what friends are for.
Hemorrhoids and got herpessyphilitis. That's what's going on right now.
No, I know myself. I'm doing really well. I'm feeling quite super. I'm getting ready to have a audition to sing "Fly Eagles Fly" on their third Christmas album upcoming here next year.
As long as you know how to spell it, because apparently some Eagles fans can't.
Yeah. Or even some political people can't even spell Eagles right. So yeah,
EAGESL Eagles.
Yeah, Eagles. No, sir, no.
But no, it's been amazing. That was, first things first. If you boycotted that Super Bowl, what were you doing? What were you doing, man? Like that was the best non-Broncos Super Bowl that I have seen, since the Rams and Bengals, and of all things, it involved the Kansas City Chiefs. It was glorious.
And also, if you're a Broncos fan and you were cheering for the Chiefs, turn in your fan card. You are done. You cannot support the Broncos anymore. It doesn't matter if they're in the same division. That's why you cheer against them. You never cheer in division unless it helps your playoff chances.
Absolutely. This whole thing about how the AFC West reigns supreme. No, fuck that. The only way the AFC West reigns supreme is if the Denver Broncos reign supreme.
What? And
we need to get like a F-bomb swear jar in this, because Gage is just going off today.
Yeah. I can't swear on Broncos Syndicate. I have to get it all out of my system here.
I don't care. I'm not used to it. Gage is like, F that, F you. Like, okay, Gage.
But like,
3 minutes in.
But like, as you learn what you've been dealing with in college football, like in college football, there's a different rooting standard once you hit bowl season. Once you've hit bowl season, like that's when, okay, the Big Ten Conference reigns supreme for the best conference record-wise in bowl season. At that point, you probably want to root for some Big Ten teams because of your record. This is not the same thing. There are just a small amount of teams in your division, and the goal is to win your division every single year. So if you are one of the dumb, pathetic Bronco fans that are actually choosing to root for the Kansas City Chiefs, your fan card will be revoked, and pretty sure you will be outed by a lot of members of Broncos country. Hopefully it's like all of them. But I'm just telling you, it is a bad look when you are rooting for the enemy.
I love the Super Bowl so much, I'm rewatching it right now.
Yep.
Nice.
It's on NFL Network, and I'm watching it.
They're gonna
now, I did want to hit this super chat that David sent in. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Just give a quick answer because we're going to get into this a little bit later in the show, but I want to hit all the Super Bowl stuff first. But I know they won't be, but if Warren and Genty are there at 20, who do we take? Quick answer.
I don't know. According to mock draft database, like there's multiple scenarios where Tyler Warren and Ashton Genty have been there. Anyway, if Tyler Warren and Ashton Genty are there at 20, I am Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty, man. Like I am just literally just taking it all off and streaking to the podium. Like, we're Ashton Genty.
There you go.
I'm actually Ashton.
Talking about streaking and he didn't even answer
it. Oh, Dave.
No, didn't say nothing. We're just sitting there staring at each other.
I was like,
I'm in a new place. My internet shouldn't be crashing out anymore.
No, we got you. You're good.
Sweet. I think were you guys both good?
We're good.
I think that it's probably going to be Genty. If there's a magical scenario out there that it's not going to happen, but if there's a magical scenario out there where both are available, Genty is your guy. And let's just say that the Broncos would be over the moon if Genty were there at 20. I'm just going to put it that way.
Yeah, I also would take Genty, but I am hearing some things because we all have some insiders. I am hearing some things that the Broncos are ranking Loveland over Warren.
It's possible. It's possible.
So just throwing that out there.
I also will say to the people that are in favor of Warren, it's not a wrong thing at all, because you're in a situation where it didn't turn out the way, but if you look at the scenario, the way it played out draft wise and mock draft wise, it was basically like the way that it all unfolded. I want to say was 2020 when Jerry Jeudy was on the board and CeeDee Lamb was on the board. Prospect wise, you could not go wrong with either. Prospect wise, you could not go wrong. And so I think that if you're in a situation where Tyler Warren and Ashton Genty are available with you at 20, you're actually celebrating. You are celebrating for the fact that both of them are available.
Or you just go get Fedoni. I mean, that works.
See, now you're speaking my language.
So since I'm rewatching the Super Bowl, we just talked about the Super Bowl. We all just watched the Super Bowl. Let's talk about it. It was awesome. No 3-peat. It was it wasn't even close until the fourth quarter, and it was only close because they just gave it to them.
They were close, yeah.
But we'll talk Super Bowl, but I also want to talk about Mahomes because that was one of the worst performances ever for a quarterback in the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying that the GOAT debate is over. It's not. Obviously, it's still Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady is the GOAT. But Mahomes still has that opportunity to put himself back in that debate. Because you look at it, and Tom Brady was 3-2 by the time he was 29. Mahomes is 3-2 by the time he's 29. So I'm not saying that the debate is over, but Brady never lost by that much in a Super Bowl. I think the two he lost by, or three they lost, he lost by 15 points altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And Mahomes is at the two Super Bowls he's lost are in the top 5 of biggest blowouts of all time in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you also have to call it for what it is, and that is his play style will catch up eventually. And this is something that we have been saying about Mahomes, ever since he's been in the league, is that his play style will catch up to a lot of NFL defenses, and it was on full display where the kryptonite of Patrick Mahomes has always been Vic Fangio. Put the record aside, yeah, he had been undefeated, but in every single game when Fangio was head coach at Denver, he put Mahomes in living hell every single game. And it was something else that were factors in favor of why the Chiefs won that game and not Denver. But Fangio was always having Mahomes in just a nightmare cell, and he can never get out of it. And I think that basically what you gave them was a blueprint of how you can beat them going forward. And it really is that, we'll definitely get into it, but it's everything that we've been preaching about, getting to the quarterback, creating a lot of pressure, basically having him be a pocket quarterback is everything that you want Mahomes to do. And because of that, it created so much of a panic attack for Mahomes in the game, where the plays where he would normally hit 10 times out of 10, he wasn't, because he was flustered, he was rattled, everything was getting into his head. The throws that he was making were not throws. And I mean, like the secondary of the Philadelphia Eagles were like absolutely playing at such a high, level. I mean, you could not have scripted a better Super Bowl if you were Vic Fangio. So frankly, I personally think it took a significant hit.
And they didn't even blitz.
They didn't even blitz at all.
Nope.
But it took that loss of a Super Bowl for my sake, and I'm biased. I admit I'm biased. But like that took a significant hit in terms of his greatest of all time. Because again, like if you want to be in the conversation of greatest of all time, in every single Super Bowl that you want to be a part of, you do not get blown out by that much. And you were blown out by that much. So going forward, they gave you a blueprint, and I would venture to guess that the Kansas City Chiefs will not be much of the same going forward because of that.
I agree. But we can sit here and talk about Mahomes. We can sit here and talk about the Chiefs, but I want to give some love to the Philadelphia Eagles, who completely dominated this game. As somebody who loves dominant trench football, this game brought a tear to my eye. On both sides of the ball, the Kansas City Chiefs got mauled, man, up front. You think about what the Chiefs defensive or what the Eagles defensive line was able to do to that Chiefs offensive line. The Chiefs had to mix and match some personnel on that O-line. Joe Thuney had to step in at left tackle. He's normally one of the best guards in the NFL. They had a backup guard in to replace Thuney and Mike Caliendo, but everybody up front was getting beat. Thuney was getting beat. Caliendo was getting beat. Creed Humphrey was getting beat. Trey Smith was getting beat. Jawan Taylor was getting beat. The Eagles up front had such a dominant pass rush. Milton Williams, Jalix Hunt, Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, everybody got a piece of the action up front. They were running twists and stunts up front. Just because they weren't blitzing doesn't mean they weren't manufacturing pressure. They were just manufacturing pressure with only 4-man rushes. And that is how you beat Patrick Mahomes, is you manufacture pressure with a 4-man rush. This offseason, I fully expect the NFL to go full-blown, follow the Eagles' blueprint, and try to load up on as many pass rushers as they can, both on the interior as well as edge rushers, because they all feed off of each other. You don't have a good edge rush presence unless you have a good interior defensive line, and vice versa. So you just have to load up on pass rushers all across the board. And for the Chiefs, they're going to be addressing their offensive line just like they did after Super Bowl 55 when they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They brought in a bunch of free agents. They drafted guys like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, who are starters for them now. So they're going to invest some more resources into that offensive line, and that might be what it takes to get them back to their old dominant selves, unfortunately. But we've now seen 2 times in a row, in conclusion, Patrick Mahomes completely crumble under pressure when his offensive line couldn't protect him. And it all starts with getting that pressure on the interior, collapsing the pocket around him, and leaving him nowhere to go.
Yeah, and 2 things with that. One, it shows that we were all correct during the season. We said the Chiefs are overrated. They're not as good as they were last year. They're not playing as well as they were last year. They're just pulling out at the last second. Okay, 3 things. Also, the refs finally, and again, I'm not saying that the refs were cheating for the Chiefs. I don't think that's a thing. We'll get into that. But they were finally calling the Chiefs' offensive line offsides. They were finally getting the defensive line offsides. Like, they were finally calling these plays that were like, why are you not calling them? There you go.
I had to laugh, though, because the first drive of the game for the Philadelphia Eagles was almost a phantom pass interference penalty, which, I mean,
right?
The reason why I feel like they called it was because A.J. Brown did some sort of, I don't know, some touch, if you want to call it.
It was like just kind of a little slap.
His hand on his face mask, like pushing him away.
Like some touch, not just a blatant, like stiff arm in the face.
But then everybody was super mad when they didn't call the hands to the face on Jalen Carter for Mahomes. And people are like, well, they're just evening it out.
The game was already gone at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then obviously there was the what is it, the late hit from Nick Bolton on Saquon Barkley, where people are like, oh, that was a questionable, pit. It's like, did you see that play? Like, Bolton hit him late. Like, what?
I thought that one was a little wishy-wash.
I thought it was a late hit, but still, like, to your point though, Mike, it is very, very well relaxing when you can finally get a chance to see an officiated game where, for the Chiefs, it doesn't go your way. It doesn't go your way. So how do you think we feel? So it's just one of those, like, how do you think we feel? So it was nice.
Yeah. Seeing them have their little whiny fits on the sideline was just beautiful.
And then the third thing I wanted to bring up, and this goes with what Gage was talking about with working on their offensive line, the free agents that the Chiefs are going to have to sign is massive. They have a huge list of contributing starting players that they're going to have to sign, and they don't have the cap space for it. And the Hunts are not the richest owners in the NFL.
But they are
cash. Not going to, but they are, I think at this point, with the amount of players that they would have to sign, and this isn't including Travis Kelce, who I don't think comes back. I don't know if you can put out a team as good next year as this year. And this wasn't even that good of a team compared to what they've had.
I agree.
I actually think that Travis Kelce comes back, but still, to the point, like, they're not going to be as good. There are going to be a lot of moving pieces out of Kansas City going elsewhere, which is probably going to force their hand to, which is what they should do, of building that offensive line. And I think the one thing, if you do look at, the Kansas City Chiefs and over the course of the season, where it finally caught up with them was that offensive line. Look, you can put Tooney on at left tackle all you want, but at the end of the day, he's a guard. And at some point, when you were going to face the Eagles or the Buffalo Bills or whoever it was that you're going to be facing with a dominant defensive line, they were going to expose that weakness and expose it fast. And that's exactly what happened. And so I think that when you look at it just from the standpoint of even how the Chiefs were operating on the offensive line, it was even going to catch up to them eventually based on that offensive line. When you had Tooney on there and you had a player who hadn't really contributed much at left guard to make up for Tooney, like, it was just a bad combination all the way around for that Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And then, of course, Mr. False start that's never called, of course, illegal motion, that sort of thing, lined
up in the backfield.
Lined up in the backfield, Juwan Taylor. He's got, of course, his own issues now too. So,
and I do want to bring this up. Like, there was a lot of talk about Kansas City not being healthy throughout the season. In the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes is healthy. Hollywood Brown was healthy. DeAndre Hopkins was healthy. Isaiah Pacheco was healthy. Xavier Worthy was healthy. Travis Kelce was healthy. There's no excuse. Like, Chris Jones was healthy. Nobody was hurt.
Yeah. Well,
they had their all-star team in there, and they just got spanked.
And their excuse in 55 was they were hurt.
It's not now. So sorry, Cameron, and we can go back to this, but I do have a question. Let's say that instead of the Chiefs, the Bills were in there or the Ravens were in there. I don't think it's any different. I think it's the same thing. Maybe a little bit closer, but I still think the Eagles dominate.
I agree. And actually, that's where I was going to go with this next, because everything that I've been preaching in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles with why they are a wagon is exactly why I thought that there was a legitimate chance that the Eagles could beat the Chiefs by 10 or more.
Sorry, they just did the DeJean pick six. My bad.
No, but it's just like that. There was a legitimate reason why I felt like the Eagles could have beaten the Chiefs by over 10. And that's just because they are just an unbelievable wagon. And it actually starts because of that, because of Jalen Hurts. The people need to give Hurts the credit that he deserves. I don't know what else he needs to show. I mean, obviously, he may not be the best perfect passer in the world, but the moment you doubt him as a passer, the moment you doubt him as a passer is the moment he starts dotting you up. The worst play of the game ended up not being the most impactful play of the game, which was his interception. Like, that was his only bad play over the course of the entire game. He did exactly what he did 2 Super Bowls ago. He outperformed Patrick Mahomes. He outperformed the greatest of all time, according to some. Like, he has done everything that they possibly could have asked post Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, becoming the guy and becoming a focal point of the offense. And you give him Saquon Barkley. You give him A.J. Brown. You give him Devontae Smith. You give him Dallas Goedert. He has all the weapons at his disposal. So the moment things are cooking with grease, they are going to be a wagon for years to come because of the way that things are so well constructed down there in Philly.
And that's the thing that annoys me with the national media a little bit is you look at Jalen Hurts and it's, oh, well, he was so good because he's got all those all-stars on offense. But then you look at Patrick Mahomes and they're like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is carrying that team. Well, what about all the all-stars we just named that were healthy in the Super Bowl, right? Like, he has more weapons on his team than Jalen Hurts does offensively. But Jalen Hurts is the problem, but Patrick Mahomes is not the problem. It doesn't make any sense.
So let me tell you. Oh, sorry, Cam. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the Eagles' weapons are actually better than the Chiefs' weapons, personally.
Right, but they don't have as many as what the Chiefs have, is what I'm saying.
I think they have a few more.
You think so?
Yeah.
You've got guys like Jahan Dotson as depth. You obviously got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You've got Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Gainwell. I think that if not more, they probably are equal in terms of volume, but I think that the production, I mean, at least with the wide receivers, is way the hell better than what Kansas City has right now. I mean, Nuke Hopkins was horrible in this game. Like, he was so bad. He wasn't getting open. He was dropping passes. He was a shell of himself. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires after this game because I don't think he's got much left in the tank.
That's my Jackie.
And, I think this is honestly a good time to maybe transition to the Denver Broncos and talking about how they want to approach this offseason in comparison to how the Philadelphia Eagles have built their team. Because I think that, like I said earlier, this might completely change the overall philosophy of how teams want to build this offseason. If you continue to add depth in the trenches, even if you have good players, add more. Keep adding more to consistently fill the pipeline. That way you can stay competitive in the AFC and in the AFC West for a long time.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, I think that I think it's one of the reasons why, maybe to kind of transition to that a little bit, it's probably one of the reasons why I want to focus. When you look at the number one targets in free agency, that's why I'm looking at specifically guys like a Zach Bond, right? Like a Zach Bond, or even doubling up there. And I think that's why, like, my dream scenario of this entire offseason from the free agency side of things, is to go out and get Zach Bond, and then you also go out and get like a Dre Greenlaw, right? You go out and get a Dre Greenlaw, or you go out and get, who's another one of the linebackers that's out there, maybe even a Bolton, if you can pry Bolton away from Kansas City. So I think that, my thing is that the idea of having a true inside linebacker needs to be going out the window. I love Alex Singleton. He's a tackling machine. But when you want an aggressive, a tackling type of defense that's going to go hand in hand with your front seven or your defensive line, which we saw from Denver has a very solid front seven in terms of defensive line, you need solid linebacker play, and that's exactly what the Eagles had. So you combat that by getting a Zach Bond and getting a Dre Greenlaw. You have that kind of combination. I think it would be really worthwhile and worth the while, if you will, to get those types of combinations at linebacker to factor in that. And then you go to the draft, right, Gage? And this is what you and I talked about beforehand. then that's where this defensive line conundrum is a fascinating one with that first round pick, or even the second round pick, because the overall top 150 picks is just it's loaded with defensive line. And I think, we talk about doubling up with wide receiver. We talk about doubling up with tight end and running back. Like, I would not be the least bit surprised and or upset if they doubled up at defensive line with those top 150 picks.
Yep.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say the only thing I would say against Cam with Zach Bond is he's not going to leave the Eagles. There's no way.
We don't know.
They're going to pay him. Dre Greenlaw's gone. Like, he's going to be out. I think we all can accept that. But Zach Bond, with what the Eagles have to sign this offseason, and there's not a lot, Zach Bond, I think, is going to be one of the focuses of their offseason. I would agree.
I would tend to agree. However, if there is a team who would pry him away, I would venture to guess it is 100% the Denver Broncos, because of the fact Sean Payton drafted him and because he's got the Jim Leonard connection, which I believe he was there at Wisconsin when Leonard was defensive coordinator.
Pretty sure he was. I think that when it comes to a guy like Zach Bond, the Philadelphia Eagles have done such a good job filling their defensive line pipeline, even the edge rushers, but they haven't had consistent quality linebacker play. So that would kind of maybe lend towards them keeping a Zach Bond. But don't get me wrong. If he is available on the free agent market, the number one target team for him is going to be the Denver Broncos. But I kind of want to talk about Howie Roseman's overall philosophy for building his teams and how the Denver Broncos could follow a similar blueprint. And it's really kind of what's that?
Get him from Georgia.
I mean, that's definitely part of it for sure. I mean, for Denver,
a message to the Eagles: if you want to get rid of Jalen Carter, we'll take him.
Seriously,
throwing that out there.
Hey, they might be able to get their own Jalen Carter in the draft, but it all starts with really this 3-tier philosophy. And number one, fill your needs, your immediate direct needs, via free agency and the trade market. We've seen them bring in guys like A.J. Brown via trade, Saquon Barkley and Zach Bond in free agency. Those are the moves that Howie Roseman has thrived on. But if you're going to fill a need in the draft, do it 1 year before that need is going to come up. They had Jason Kelsey on the way out, and they ended up drafting in back-to-back years Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens. Jurgens eventually took over for him, and then they had Dickerson there too.
I wanted Cam Jurgens so bad.
Dude, me too. I loved Cam Jurgens coming out. I loved him. He was a dog. But they got those guys a year before they had the need come up. You know, they had Fletcher Cox retiring soon, so they bring in guys like Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis. They bring in guys on the edge with Brandon Graham retiring. I think Denver could do something very similar. You know, John Franklin Myers only has 1 year left on his contract. Zach Allen, no doubt they're going to extend him, but they might not be able to extend JFM. They've got DJ Jones on an expiring deal this year. So those could be areas where they can address the need a little bit earlier than it becomes an immediate need. And number three, it's kind of similar to number two, prioritize trenches early. Always have depth in the trenches on the offensive line and the defensive line. The Broncos got soft up front on the defensive line towards the end of the year. They need to have a quality rotation so we can keep these guys fresh and make sure that they don't get soft at the end of the year. So it's kind of that 3-tier philosophy that I want the Denver Broncos to follow as they build this team, not only for these coming couple of years with Bo Nix on his rookie deal, but moving forward even after Bo Nix gets expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up and see if you guys had heard that before.
I haven't heard anything in terms of a switch in defensive philosophy. If that were the case, I'd be curious as to why they wanted to bring Vance back. Because Vance, he kind of falls in line with more of the 3-4. But I mean, again, like if that is the case, but I still think even then, when you have the linebacker play of Bond, who's so versatile, I feel like he was not system dependent, so he can play either a 3-4 or a 4-3.
I think I did hear about this. It was on Orange and Blue today with Cease and Mace. And I do believe that they might implement some more 4-3 fronts, kind of more hybrid fronts. But I don't think that they're going to do a full-blown scheme change. Stoke apparently also said it today. So it's coming from 104.3 The Fan. I don't think it's going to be a full-blown scheme change. If they had hired Dennis Allen as their defensive coordinator, if they had lost VJ, then yeah, because Dennis Allen's a 4-3 guy. But I think that right now they're going to stick with 3-4. But we have this conversation about 3-4-4-3. Nickel is the base defense in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is the fact. It's all nickel defense and dime defense. 3-4-4-3 kind of matters less and less in the modern NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can kind of adjust and move and switch things. Like the Eagles, a lot of what they were doing against Kansas City was a 4-3 front, but they don't run a 4-3.
Yeah, Vic's not a 4-3 guy.
All right, so sorry. Since we started talking about free agency and trades and what might and might not happen in the offseason, we do have some things to discuss. And Cam, you and I talked about them last week a little bit, but there are more. So, and Gage wasn't here, so we're gonna bring him up again. Gage, Myles Garrett.
Man, I honestly don't think that's a need for the Broncos right now. That would be such a luxury move considering they still have to add some playmakers. They need more interior pressure than they do edge pressure. They've got guys like Coop, Benito, Jonah Ellis. So, no, I'm out.
You know, and I think we even mentioned this too, Mike, last week, but it's like you almost would have to be forced to give up a player. And by player, you know, one of your younger assets, right? And I would venture to guess that, you know, the Browns probably would want a Nick Benito in that scenario. And I would venture to guess, at least early on, I don't think the Broncos would be wanting to give away, you know, a Nick Benito there. So, and then not to mention, of course, you know, the multiple first-round picks, right? You know, so I think I just think that particular scenario, I mean, it's just a no for me. And I think I said that last week. It's like, it's not, and again, the no isn't that I don't want a Myles Garrett, because I mean, who wouldn't want a Myles Garrett? It's just when you look realistically at the whole situation, it's like, there's just no way we're going to be getting a Myles Garrett.
Well, and Cam, this is what I said last week. It's kind of nice to be in the spot where we're not sitting here thinking about, we need him, we have to have him, or we're going to have a horrible season, right? Like, we are in position with the owners that we have and with the coaches that we have that we can sit back and think about wants. Like, what do we want? Yeah. We don't need anybody. I mean,
right.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. We're not desperate for anybody, right? Yeah. Like, we have some needs, but we're not desperate.
If it depends.
Well, we can sit here and think about, well, desperate meaning like we don't have to go out there and be like, we have to get Saquon Barkley or this isn't going to work. You know what I mean? Like,
they're desperate at tight end.
Right? Like, we're not trading our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth round pick so we can move up into the number one spot because we have to go get a quarterback. You know what I mean?
But I think
we're not in a desperate situation.
I think for me, like, desperate's more, you look at desperation, I think it's more so on the offensive side of the ball.
We're not the Raiders. Okay? Is that better?
No, that's a fact. But I just think the desperation's more so like on the offensive side of the ball, as far as like the needs that they probably would need, like tight end, like running back, like the Joker, right? And it's pretty evident that Sean Payne's made it very evident that the team needs the Joker on this team when he's clearly a block away over at Ball Arena. Just saying, But no, they need a Joker on their team. So that's a desperation, right? So they need more playmakers, but also too, you could argue the one desperation move.
Sorry. Sorry.
I will say that the one part where you might say is desperation is the interior defensive line.
Mm-hmm. I agree, because they need more depth. They do, because think about it. DJ Jones is potentially on his way out the door. John Franklin Myers next year is potentially on his way out the door. They need depth, and they need guys who can rotate these guys out. Zach Allen played, I can't recall the exact number, but it was such a high number of snaps that it's so unrealistic moving forward. You need a rotation on that line. The Eagles are, 8 guys deep on that defensive line on the interior? And it's because they rotate them in and out, and all of them can produce at a high level.
Because
that was one of the points that I brought up last week was it's not that we need a Myles Garrett, but let's say we got Myles Garrett. You've got Zach Allen on one side, Myles Garrett on the other side. You got Nick Bonito coming at you. You got Jonathan Cooper coming at you. Like you have so many. Well, why wouldn't we have Nick Bonito? They're not going to trade Nick Bonito.
I think they would. I think they would have to.
Yeah.
Jonathan Cooper would make sense, but Bonito, no.
Well, the Browns are like, we are not trading away Myles Garrett. Blow us away with an offer. And that means you'd have to give up a player that you don't want to give up. Somebody that is such high value to your team that it basically gives the Browns a deal that they can't refuse.
They could have Jamari Mathis.
But no, that's why it's Bonito.
All right, so we have some other options. You talk about the Joker. We didn't talk about this one last week because it just came up. Deebo Samuel is now asking for a trade from the 49ers. I'm not saying that I would want him, but when you think about the Joker position, as Sean Payton says, first thing that comes to mind is Deebo Samuel.
It's true.
And in our group chat, it had been brought up that Marvin Mims was our Joker, but I pointed out, like, that doesn't mean that Marvin Mims is a Joker player, right? That just means that he was the best person we had available for that spot last year.
The Deebo Samuel angle is really fascinating because, I mean, if you were to ask just the player and current standing, I probably would say I'm out on him. But the way you look at it, it starts to get a little bit more enticing. You know, you first start with 2022, where it came out where he wanted to be paid like a wide receiver, right? And I don't think they necessarily paid him like a wide receiver. They kind of paid him.
It was in between running back and wide receiver.
It was definitely in between. And I think that given the situation that they found themselves in 2024, they had no other choice but to play Deebo Samuel a fair amount out of the backfield because of the Christian McCaffrey injury. And so I think that long-term, the best thing for him would be wide receiver. But that said, you do look at the Joker position of running back, tight end, and even that wide receiver. He fits that like a glove. Cooper Kupp does not in terms of the Joker position. Like Kupp fits it from the outside to the inside, meaning like the boundary wide receiver to the slot receiver, where he can be able to work the middle of the field. Deebo kind of works like, more so like everything. And I think that, where it gets to be so interesting is if the Broncos brought in Deebo Samuel and he wanted to be solely a wide receiver, you might actually still need a Joker at that point. And that's where it gets so fascinating, and so I don't want to Taysom Hill. He's well over the hill. I think that you can get a Taysom Hill in, probably a year from now or 2 years when you draft Heinrich Haarberg. But
no.
But anyway, no. I think that when you look at the way that it's being interpreted by me, if he wants to be a wide receiver, and you still have Marvin Mims on your roster who's fine tuning his route tree, they still might need a Joker. And then at that point, the best thing for this team going forward to find their Joker is through the draft with guys like Ashton Genty, Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren, possibly some others mixed in as well. So it would be interesting to see it all unfold, but there's no doubt Deebo kind of checks a lot of those boxes.
I think the reason I have such a strong opinion on this is the body of work of Deebo Samuel these past couple of years has not blown me away. I think that athletically, he is not the same player that he was even a couple of years ago. And I also think that he is having some issues holding on to the football. Last year, he had 6 drops. He's been very vocal about not liking his role with the 49ers, so he might bring a toxic, complaining culture to this locker room that I just don't want, quite frankly. So I just feel like Deebo Samuel makes no sense for this team with what they're trying to build. The reason why I'm pounding the table for Cooper Kupp, and quite frankly, I think some of this conversation is moot because Benjamin Albright made it pretty clear the Broncos are probably not going to trade for anybody. But the reason I'm so high on Cooper Kupp is this run game is so stagnant. And the reason why it's been so stagnant outside of not having a true RB1 is blown blocks from the wide receiver and tight end position. And they need guys who can block. They need tight ends who can block, and they need wide receivers who can block. And Cooper Kupp is the best blocking wide receiver out there, in my opinion. If you were to go out there and bring him in, he is your instant upgrade over little Jordan Humphrey. And we talk about Marvin Mims. You can still use him in those one-on-one matchup situations out of the backfield, and you can then have Cooper Kupp in the slot where he can do all kinds of damage in the short to intermediate areas of the field. So that's why I'm pounding the table for him. Deebo, I understand the versatility angle of it, but I just don't think he is the same Deebo Samuel that everybody thinks we would be getting.
Yeah. Well, and I still I still like the idea of moving little Jordan Humphrey to tight end, having him bulk up a little bit and move him to tight end.
You're welcome. But at that point, but I'll say,
it's a good thought.
No, but like it was crazy. It's like you look at the little Jordan Humphrey idea, size-wise, height-wise, he's basically the same height and weight as Juwan Johnson. So it's just like, it makes a ton of sense.
Who also is going to be a free agent from the Saints and was drafted by Sean Payton. Yep. He was the next one I was going to bring up. Juwan Johnson and here's my question to you guys, because there's not a whole lot to talk about with Juwan Johnson. Are there any other tight ends that you think Denver would go after, or is a free agent that Denver would go after?
Cam's got one.
Well,
that's why I asked the question.
I do.
Oh, and hold on. I wanted to check with Bill. How is your glory hole research coming, sir? Just let me know in the chat.
And make sure you clear the history.
His Facebook feed is screwed for the next week.
But I think that just real quick just to go back on Deebo, I'm out on Deebo, but I just think from like the player side of things, that's why I was looking at it, in the way that I was. I'm more in favor of Cooper Kupp. As far as the tight end goes, I think we might want to talk about Gesicki. Look, I'm not saying this just from the standpoint of, don't go out and get like a Rondre Gadsden or, drafting a tight end like a Colston Loveland or, anything like that. I'm just looking at it just when you look at the team and strictly free agency and everything that Gage even outlined, right? Like the point is to fill every single need in free agency before you get to the draft, right? So if you fill your team with a Mike Gesicki, with some linebacker help of Dre Greenlaw, with some defensive line help of possibly re-signing DJ Jones, which I'm not opposed to. You re-sign DJ Jones, or you bring in another defensive lineman, or you bring in some players and maybe in a running back like an Aaron Jones or a Najee Harris. You fill some of these needs, in free agency, which are the vast majority of your needs. Well, Aaron at that point, if you've been that aggressive and you bring in a Mike Gesicki, you could legitimately go anywhere you wanted to in the draft. Absolutely anywhere. You could go out and get a safety. You could go out and draft a linebacker. I saw Jahad Campbell in the comments. You could go out and get a Jahad Campbell from Alabama. You could go out and get a Jalen Walker and make him be a chess piece, for your linebacker room, and maybe do a freaky linebacker room of Drew Sanders and Jalen Walker, type of situation. So I just think the Gesicki thing is one where he also fills the immediate need of that tight end room where he becomes that tight end threat, that seam threat down the middle of the field, for Bo. he's a pure receiving threat, and you know that he's already been proven as one. So, and I also think it's got to be at some point for him where he's going to be looking for a longer term contract, because at this point, he's bounced around a few times. He hasn't really signed like a 3-4 year deal. And I'm not saying 4-year deal, but I'm just saying like a longer term contract. So I'm all for Gesicki. And I just think that, he certainly feels a need immediately in the receiving game.
All right. You sold it to me.
David wants to know if Sean will put a franchise tag on anyone. I don't think there's anybody worth putting a franchise tag on.
No.
No.
And that's the beauty of what they did in this regular season, locking up Pat Surtain, locking up Garrett Bowles, locking up Jonathan Cooper. I just think that, when you factor in
go with Michael Burton, but I don't think they're going to franchise tag him.
Franchise tag Javonte Williams? Heck no.
Lil Jordan Humphrey is a free agent, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's dirt cheap. You can bring him back on a vet minimum deal.
Comment was asked about Gesicki and Kenny Block. The answer is no. So meaning like you would go out and you could either have your pair of Adam Troutman and Mike Gesicki, or you could still go get a Juwan Johnson, right? Go get Juwan Johnson, Gesicki, and
Colton
Troutman.
Loveland.
Then at that point, you really could go anywhere, and you could still take a Tyler Warren. Actually, that would probably more favor a Tyler Warren, given the whole situation, because you put him in the backfield. You could literally put him, anywhere that you want on the offensive side of the ball. So I wouldn't even advise, I would not advise against the Broncos of even taking a Juwan Johnson and a Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, because if you're going to get Mike Gesicki, you need somebody who can block. And I don't even know if Adam Troutman's on this team next year. You can actually save a bit of money moving on from Troutman.
There's also Atkins too, of course.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to bring him up, actually. I think Nate Atkins could be in line for a bigger role in that scenario as well. But I think that you can still maybe be in line to bring in a Juwan Johnson, who I think is a better blocker, at least, than Mike Gesicki is. Gesicki is not functional as a blocker whatsoever, and that's probably my biggest argument against it. But from Cam's argument of things, I could see that happening, but it would have to be in a tandem with somebody else who can fill those needs at blocking tight end.
That's probably the only reason why I bring it up.
Yep.
Let's answer this one, then I have an interesting question for you. Why does Sean love Lil Jordan Humphrey?
Every reason that Gage talked about the running game is the reason why Sean loves Lil Jordan Humphrey. He blocks his tail off. He might be the best blocking wide receiver on the team right now. And that's the reason why, look, there's that adage of, we heard it a lot, Mike, watching, Cornhusker games with Holgerson, where he would come out and say, no block, no rock. That should be the mantra for the team. When you have, with this particular team going forward. And that's why Sean loves Lil Jordan Humphrey. And it's why he's been getting touches. He blocks his tail off. And it's also one of the reasons why I'd love to convert him to tight end, because he blocks his tail off. He might actually, not just wide receiver, he might actually be the best blocking player next to Quentin Miners and Mike McGlinchey and, and any of some of the people on the offensive line. He is one of the better blockers on the team.
So here's the interesting question for you. And there have been rumors swirling around that this certain team that played in the Super Bowl might move on from their future Hall of Fame tight end.
No.
If they do, does Denver come a calling?
No.
No Travis Kelce, or no, he's not getting cut from the Chiefs?
No, he's not getting cut from the Chiefs, and no Travis Kelce in Denver. Both.
Why not?
Just doesn't fit.
I mean, there's just not much to say. And also the team's going younger. The team's going younger. They want younger. It certainly seems like Sean is embracing the younger, which also could give us an idea of maybe why they don't want to go after Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel, by the way.
I know a tight end that's still in playing shape. Shannon Sharp. Go get him.
Woo! Bring Unk back, baby.
Yes! Run it back one more time.
I mean, Terrell Davis is in play shape too. Bring in Terrell.
That's reason enough not to sign him right there. Travis Kelce is an ass clown.
I don't think he's an ass clown. I actually like Travis Kelce.
If you want to get respect in the national media, have Travis Kelce and his girlfriend Taylor Swift at the games. You want to solve the media problem? Go get Tay-Tay.
I think Travis wants to run this back one more year in KC. I think all this talk of retirement should have probably gone out the window the moment they lost. I think that he doesn't want to go out like that. I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to go out like that. He played like shit in the Super Bowl. He really did.
Yep.
He was dropping passes. He was just like DeAndre Hopkins out there. Both of them were complete and total disasters. They were shells of their former selves. And I don't think Kansas City wants to move on from him. They pretty much told him, as long as you're playing with us. So, yeah, he's going to probably run it back one more year, and if they fail to get there, then he's gone.
Chiefs are going 8-9. I'm calling it right now.
That's definitely
Also,
kind of an early take.
You obviously haven't been watching this show for very long if you think that's the dumbest thing I've ever said.
No, the dumbest is actually starting to bring up Glory Hole again.
I'm sorry. A certain take of Travis Hunter is up there for me.
I stand by that one. Cam and I even talked about it last week.
Banned. You're back on IR, sir. Get out.
You can't ban me. It's my network. Yeah, I think that's about it. As far as trades and free agencies go, draft wise, we say, or Gage, you just said that when you're focusing on need, your need gets met in free agency. So you can draft whoever you want in the draft. Obviously, everybody wants Ashton Genty. Everybody and their mother wants Ashton Genty. I don't think he falls to 20. I think you got to trade up to get him, but you got to trade up to at least 11 because the Cowboys are sitting there at 12, right?
Yep.
Do we even have a shot at Ashton Genty?
Yes,
and
they
if
do.
If we do and we have to trade up, how much is it going to take to trade up that far?
You probably are looking at giving up a second this year and quite possibly a third next year. I think that might get it done. But you would have to trade up in front of Dallas. That was the general consensus I got at the Shrine Bowl, just hearing some conversations on the sidelines with various media members. I feel like you're probably just going to have to get up to from 20 to 11, and that is very doable with like a second and a third.
Yeah, and it's going to be worth repeating because we saw it even in the Bo Nix draft cycle, and it's one of the reasons why, let's just say for whatever reason, like the front office and or I should say specifically some members of the ownership, like hypothetically, let's just say some people in the ownership really want Ashton Genty, right? Well, if there's one thing we know about Sean Payton is he does not care what the public opinion thinks. And I think that alone should give us an idea that if he is sold on a Tyler Warren, or in this case, an Ashton Genty on conversation, he will trade up for Ashton Genty. I'm just saying it right now. Like, he will trade up for Ashton Genty if that is the case. Because the moment he is sold on something like that, he will make sure and ensure that he gets his guy. And it's been that way ever since he was shafted because of the Patrick Mahomes stuff in that draft class, which, funny enough, in that same draft class, he took Trey Hendrickson and Alvin Kamara, interestingly enough. But it can happen where, Sean Payton doesn't care what the public opinion thinks. We can say we like Tyler Warren. We can say we like Ashton Genty. Sean might like someone else. And I think that's where, if the ownership is on board to where they like Ashton Genty and it falls in line with what Sean wants, don't be surprised if that ends up being the overall consensus and they just they do it. Like they sell their souls and they go get Ashton Genty.
Yep.
Well, and it's not like we're the Cleveland Browns and we can't draft anybody for anything, right? Like, you have to look back at George Payton draft classes, and there's not many things you can complain about. Like, we can't sit here and be like, oh, you're going to get it wrong if you don't get this guy. They've got guys on the team that we didn't even hear about until we drafted them, and they turned out to be fantastic.
Quinn Miners
Cooper being one of them. Quinn Miners being another one. Like, there's so many guys that we've drafted that have worked out. at this point, like, I'm going to put full and complete trust in the coaching staff and the front office to do their thing and draft the right person.
Yep.
But that means if you don't get Genty and you still need running back, are you going like an Aaron Jones? Are you going Najee Harris? Are you waiting until the second, third round, going after North Carolina running back, going after Wisconsin's running back? Like, there's so many options here.
So we sit here on February 11th, right? And I'm just going to tell you right now, Omarion Hampton is way too, like, he being picked at 51. He's not going to be picked at 51. He's going to be borderline first round pick, early day 2. Like, he's that type of running back. Caleb Johnson's the same way. I think that's the beauty of the fact of where the Broncos are, is that, and probably why, and the reason why, and it's not wrong, why probably some people favor Tyler Warren in terms of that question earlier that I believe was David that mentioned, Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren. That's probably one of the reasons why some people would favor Tyler Warren, because you can actually go and get a Warren, and then you can go out and get like a Devin Neal, a Trevion Henderson, or even a Donovan Edwards a little bit later, or a Dylan Sampson, right? So there are some players, or even a Quentin Judkins, from Ohio State. So like there are a lot of options, a lot of joker options at running back that the Broncos can go with that isn't just Ashton Genty.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do believe that they will add a back in free agency, and they will also add one in the draft. It's the whole solve your needs in free agency, and then you have the luxury to take best player available in the draft. And best player available could very well come at running back, not necessarily even in the first round if they don't get Genty. If there's somebody available in the second round, in the third round, and that's best player available, you have the luxury of taking him.
So then
wow. Genty will probably be there. I'm not high on him as everyone else, though.
I think me
and Travis Hunter.
But we're still sit here on February 11th. Crazier crap has happened, and also, we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Every single player that the Dallas Cowboys have wanted over the years, the Denver Broncos have taken him. I'm just saying.
It's not their coaches. They can have Schottenheimer. You can keep him.
Yeah,
we don't need that.
But so let me ask you this then, like, just for both of you, what is your preference? Sean Payton doesn't care about our preference. What is your guys' preference from the overall running back position? My personal opinion is I would be taking 2 in the draft.
I think I already made my stance clear.
Yeah, I like Gage's. Take 1 in free agency, take 1 in the draft. But for me, I would almost want to, because I don't think you're going to get Genty unless you get in the top 12. So yeah. I almost would rather trade up to the top of the second round and then have your pick of the running back that you want. That's still, they're good enough to be a day 1 pick that just aren't, right? Like, you still have your RB1, but you give him a year to grow with a Najee Harris, or my preference, Aaron Jones, at running back for that following year.
Yep.
So, but I agree. I think that they're just going to be way too aggressive for that running back position.
So then the big question is, because we've heard a lot of running back, tight end, wide receiver, linebacker, defensive tackle, safety. Like, we hear all these things about who Denver's going to take in the first round. Do you think they go offense or defense?
I don't know. I confidently.
Okay, which one would you rather they go, offense or defense?
I personally would want them to go offense, which would be the wide receiver, running back. Wide receivers, interestingly enough, wide receivers like 2 options. It's Matthew Golden and Mecca Ibuka. Those are the 2 wide receiver options. And Luther Burden's like the case where if he falls for some reason, he's there. He's now in that conversation of Genty, Warren.
Not an Isaiah Bond?
No, I'm not Bond. Nope.
James Bond.
So wide receiver's a bit limited there. but running back, I'm high on. So offensive players a little bit more high. But I think the one position I think that is in my wish list, and one player who's in my wish list is Walter Nolan from Ole Miss in terms of the first round. So interior defensive line, I think is ultimately one where we do need to be talking about that just a little bit more. Maybe, and then right after that is linebacker. Maybe not safety, but linebacker would be one where I would want to look into, of course.
Yeah, I think that if they are going to go defense in the first round, then it's going to be defensive line. Otherwise, it will be somebody offensively. But I said in the pregame, I don't remember if you had already jumped in or not, Mike, but I said that I believe in the top 100, they are going to come away with multiple trench players. They are going to come away with multiple defensive linemen and offensive linemen in some combination. They are going to load up on the trenches. I think George Payton sees the way the wind's blowing in the NFL with the blueprint that the Philadelphia Eagles have set up. So I think that very much the way that free agency goes is going to dictate how they go in the draft ultimately. Can they fill all their needs in free agency? If not, if they still have an immediate need, they're going to fill it. Otherwise, they're going BPA.
Yeah, and like I never want to move on from a Broncos player because we all love the Broncos, but I'm kind of over the DJ Jones. Like I like him, but I don't think he's what we thought he was going to be. Right? Like I'd rather go with a Malcolm Roach and a BJ Hill, for example.
That's fine.
I'm fine with that.
But it's one of the reasons why I'm indifferent on the whole situation. I'm fine if they bring him back. I'm fine if they, let him test the waters and he goes back to San Francisco, knowing the fact that, Salah's back in San Francisco. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, if they let him walk. And I think that's why I think that the defensive line is one where they could sign 2 defensive linemen. They did that in this last cycle. So I would not be the least bit surprised if they operated the exact same way.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is a thing that's been talked about before the Super Bowl, throughout the whole season, officiating. I will say it again. I do not think that referees are cheating for the Kansas City Chiefs. However, the fact that we're even having to have this conversation and the fact that it's been blown up all over social media means that there's obviously some sort of problem. And the league needs to fix it. I don't know what that is. I think first steps are full-time referees. I think second steps are sensors in the football and sensors in the down markers and the end zone markers. Like, then for sure the ball touched the first down line. It's a first down. We don't have to argue about it anymore, Josh Allen. And then the other thing, I think that coaches need to have challenge flags. It's like for penalties, right? Like, it should work the same way as a challenge flag. Whatever color it may be, white, pink, green, I don't care. Well, probably not green because it matches the grass. But just another flag where they can challenge like a pass interference or a face mask or something like that, right? You win one, you get another one plus the one in the other half. So you get one per half and you can add one if you win. I want to get your thoughts on officiating because it can't be that everybody's cheating, right?
In the UFL, what they have is a super challenge where you can challenge once per game anything, any big call. If it's a penalty that you think that they missed, if it's a penalty that they called that you thought was bullshit, if it's, pass interference, anything like that, they can challenge it. It's your one super challenge that you get per game. And I think that that's something the NFL needs to implement. And just like you said, you need to have chips in the football. You need to have sensors on the down markers. It's not that difficult. You've got a lesser league in the UFL doing all of this. And I'm going to take it a step further. We should be able to hear what the officials are communicating to New York. That's something that we can hear in UFL games. I understand there's only one game on at a time. It's a little bit logistically easier, but we should be able to hear the ref communication between themselves as well as to New York. That is something that lesser leagues are already doing. It's possible. It's being done. I think that, and I've talked about this before, the big issue is the NFL has lost so many of their good officials. Referees are retiring at an earlier age because a lot of them, like Gene Steratore, John Perry, they're either taking roles with TV networks or they're taking roles in team offices like John Perry has. That means that these younger officials who are maybe good down judges or good umpires, whatever, they're not ready to be referees yet, and they're being promoted. Subsequently, we've got the good umpires and down judges being promoted to referees, and that means that now the umpires, the down judges, all those guys, they suck. They're not ready to be in this position. They should still be at the college level, or some of them, quite frankly, even the high school level. So it's kind of this trickle-down problem with the officials, and I think that the lack of transparency between what the league and the officials communicate is leading us with a lot of questions as to, are they rigging this shit or not?
Yeah, and I think that's to continue, like, that is why at this current stage a lot of people are feeling like it's rigged, because I brought it up quite a handful of times, even on like this show when we've had this conversation, or even mainly. But it's just like the one play that just stands vividly in my mind is the Sauce Gardner interception on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs, where it's a physical interception, and drops it down, and then he literally, like as he's coming down, drops the flag and then issues a rare pass interference that got called on, Sauce Gardner. So it's just like, what more can you do? And I think that the only way that this is ever going to work is the censor idea. Like, that's the only way this is going to ever work. And the reason why I say that is because they tried the idea of going into and replaying, pass interference penalties, right? Like, go ask Sean Payton. It never worked. The whole reason for the pass interference and going back and looking at it was because of that moment. So like, and the moment that, and we saw it even during that type of stretch, is that when they would go look and determine whether or not it was a pass interference penalty, they would go look, they would come back, and what did we see more often than not? When they would come out of their ref tunnel, if you will, back onto the field, they would come out and basically say, we're good. Yeah, no, there was no pass interference on the play, or there was still pass interference on the play. It's like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing right here, in the sense that we are actually just tricking the system, making it seem like we're doing our job when we really aren't. And the best way to possibly do it is sensors and using AI. And I think that and the way you start is, maybe you do it in baby steps. You do it in first down increments, if you will, like the first down marker. You do it in, certain sensors of a face mask where it recognizes the fact of, okay, the finger's been on here for, maybe 10 seconds too long. Okay, so therefore that's going to end up being a face mask penalty. There are things and sensors that you can operate in the NFL where they can very easily tell whether there is conversation or not, right? Like, and I agree with you there. Like, there are even sensors there where it's like, what I just think that when you look at it from the standpoint of like, they have to make sure that the integrity of the football game is intact, and that is just like, that's exactly what we're up against now, is the integrity of football is compromised right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the other problems that referees are having is you have the NFL that's defining these rules so much. Like, they have 8 different descriptors for what a catch is, right? And like, if his finger's out at a 35-degree angle and his toe's not here, it's not a catch. Like, stop overcomplicating a catch. If it's a catch, it's a catch, right? Like, I hate the rule of, let's say he's going down, he's diving for a catch, right? Catches the ball, but he catches the ball with a little bit of his shoulder out of bounds. But the ball never hits the ground. He has the ball. It's a catch. Like the majority of him is in stop overcomplicating these things. You have all these rules that you're overcomplicating, but you're not giving the refs any more time to study it. They're still part-time employees of the NFL. So one of two things has to give. You either got to make full-time employees or you have to cut back on the definition of some of these rules.
The other, and I'm sure this is there, but the other side of this that needs to get amplified even more, there needs to be a legal side of this where the refs actually have to sign a legal document that is actually determined, and it actually is going to someone that is of trustworthiness, where if something is of the nature where the call is inaccurate in favor of favoritism, then that is a reprimand for a 5-game suspension or 6-game suspension for that certain referee. So there are certain areas where they have to take it, and if they don't go and do anything else, one change I would like to see implemented, and it is pathetic that it's not a catch to what you're describing, Mike, but it made me think of it. And we saw it a couple times so far this year in 2024. And that is, so the guy has the ball, literally, he has the ball in his possession, but instead of 2 feet falling down, that same foot hits twice in bounds, right? But it's not a catch. They need to change that rule. They need to change that rule. Just because that same foot hit twice and he has possession of the football, that should be a catch, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree.
I don't know. It's driving me nuts. I hate it. It is what it is. As far as referees getting reprimanded, that'll never happen with the referee union. Because I think personally, if you make a bad call, you should get some sort of consequence for it, right?
Agree.
You messed it up, you get, because players can't even talk about referees without getting fined, but the referees can do whatever they want and they don't get fined for it.
And that's why I think the hierarchy of the ref union, they have to be in question, because that's where that legal document, and I'm sure there is there about, favoritism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they need to amplify it a little bit more, that the moment, and that's where sensors are also involved, or cameras are certain involved, where, they're starting to see the sense of, oh, wow, he's kind of tricking the system, or in air quotes, he slipped him a 50, it's just it's sad we're having this conversation, and it's sad we're continuing to have this conversation. And until anything changes, it'll be the exact same referee product season after season. And
we have to figure out something else with New York too, right? Perfect example, that Xavier Worthy catch in the Chiefs versus the Bills. That went to New York, and they said it was a catch. No, it wasn't. We all saw that it wasn't a catch. So what happens if New York makes the wrong call? Then what?
Yeah, there's 2 layers to that for me. The first one is right around the same time this kind of referee purge happened, there was a change in structure in New York. Al Riveron had been running things up there for a long time. He suddenly called it quits, I believe, right before a season had started. And Perry Fewell, who at one point was the interim head coach of the Panthers, and Walt Anderson, a longtime referee, they both stepped in, basically running the officiating department in New York. Ever since then, the quality of calls coming out of New York have been crap. So maybe a change of structure there is needed. And like I said earlier, we should be able to hear the communication between the refs and New York, so that way we know why a call is being held up or being reversed. We need to know what it is. Or if not, the referee should have to give a detailed explanation as to why they reversed that call. They can't just say after review it is an incomplete pass. They need to say after review it is an incomplete pass because X, Y, and Z.
And also the sad reality of this, and maybe it's just because I've seen a lot of Jack Reacher shows or Jack Ryan shows, but it's just like the when we're talking about like them talking into a camera, the thought was creeping into my mind of like, well, the referees are just going to be using certain buzzwords. The referees are going to be just using certain buzzwords. It's, it makes it seem like they are actually doing, what they're supposed to be doing when they're really just their mouth is moving and they're saying something that, at the same, like, basically, like, this is what you're doing. This is what I want you to do. Shut up when it's the right answer, and let's move forward.
Yeah, I just and to go with Rich's comment about the TV networks paying more than the NFL, like, how can the NCAA have full-time referees at a full-time salary, but the NFL can't, right? Like, NFL makes way more than NCAA. I don't care what anybody says. I don't get it. Like, I understand greed and all that, but if you want to put out a better product to make more money, fix the officiating.
Yeah. Well, let's just be honest here. If you're 55 years old and you've got an opportunity to get paid millions of dollars to go up in a booth, as opposed to being down on a sideline where you're risking getting your knee blown out or you're risking some kind of injury, I'd take that opportunity 10 times out of 10. That's just smart business by those referees choosing to retire and go up to the booth. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. All right. Anything else we need to talk about? Anything I missed?
Nope. I think we're good until next week.
All right. And again, we hope that Glenn puts on that cream for his hemorrhoids so he can be back with us next week. That'll be fantastic. Bill, stop looking up glory holes. You're going to mess up your Facebook. We want to thank everybody for joining us in the show today. Too many people to name, but specifically those that sent us super chats. David, that was extremely generous, and we really do appreciate it. We also have Jay Bryan. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate that as well. If you want to go and check out every other show that's on the MHRT Network, we have shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the neighborhood is done unless the Avs make the playoffs, and we'll do some Avs games. Make sure you go and check out Broncos Syndicate with Gage Madrid. Growing like a weed is crazy. Love it. That's where I get most of my information because I don't have time to look up anything else. And if you want to, I'd suppose, watch Cameron Parker some more, you can go check out Man the Broncos. Usually going live on Wednesday night. Sometimes it's Thursday, sometimes it's Friday, sometimes it's whenever he decides he wants to. He also pops up on random other shows that I didn't know about, which is fine. So make sure you check those out. But we do appreciate everybody. We love you guys. We love the Broncos. Screw you, Chiefs. We will see you guys later. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.